Oh, hello. Before we begin today's episode, I want to introduce myself. I'm Joshua Stanko, founder and creator of the Woke is Broke podcast. Now, if my name sounds familiar, you might be one of 24 people who purchased my book, Rockers Creek, available on the Amazon Marketplace. And if not, then go buy the book. Now, our mission statement here is pretty simple. There are conversations that we all pretend not to have with people with whom we trust enough not to record those conversations and throw them up on YouTube. Well, here, at this podcast, we will be having those conversations and throwing them up on YouTube for you. And we're going to be doing it without taking your feelings into consideration, without taking anyone's feelings into consideration. Except, of course, my feelings. That's our promise to you. Now, I do have to say, I am a conservative. That is my bias. This is a conservative podcast. That being said, I do try to keep an open mind, and I enjoy sitting down and having conversations with people on the other side of the aisle, which is why we're going to be having a number of guest speakers, throughout the season. We're going to be talking about all the hot topics, really, from border issue to gun control, cancel culture, censorship. Censorship, That's the one. That is the one why we're starting this in the first place. I'll be honest, I am not a political genius. I'm not a highly educated intellectual. I'm not a Jewish lawyer. Hashtag Ben Shapiro. I'm just a guy. I work 40 hours a week at a job that's just okay. I'm shooting this out of a garage in a house I don't even own. But I see what's going on out there. I mean, I can read the tea leaves, and it scares the hell out of me. Think what you will about the last election, but when YouTube can put out a policy that says that anyone who even remotely suggests that the last election was affected by voter fraud, that they'll have that video banned and their account banned, or when Parler can be taken off the internet and the App Store for having the audacity to try and be a safe haven for people with alternative political views. Or when the great flying squirrel, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, can actually demand for what is essentially a ministry of truth while simultaneously lying about where she was during the Capitol riots, or Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the greatest and most devout of all Catholics, a man who I have no doubt in 2 months' time will come stumbling out of the White House like a blind mystic, carrying stone tablets on which new commandments that God has given his people have been written on. When that guy gets out in front of national television and says that you, the American people, that you are the government and the government is you, that is when you know. That is when you know. Passivity, it's no longer an option. Sitting back and saying, this is awful, somebody should do something, that is no longer an option. Because the very pillars on which our society is founded upon are being systematically chiseled away as we move further and further away from democracy. And what democracy ultimately is, at its essence, is dialogue. The open exchanging of different thoughts, different ideas, two people coming together and having a frickin' conversation. And we can't even do that anymore without people having their lives ripped apart, without people getting fired from their job, without people being shamed and exiled from public. It's enough. Enough is enough. It's time we take democracy back, and we're going to be doing it here. One conversation and several shameless jokes at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Woke is Broke podcast. Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Woke is Broke podcast. Our top stories today: the perfect storm that is nearly upon us. Now, let me be a little bit less theatrical and vague. October of 2020, gas here in the Savannah area is about $1.81 a gallon. Flash forward to November, Joe Biden's elected, and gas prices start to go up. Now, how does that happen? Essentially, the gas companies, when a new president is elected, will look at this new candidate and say, we think he's either going to be good for the economy or bad for the economy. We think he's either going to be good for gas or bad for gas. They thought Joe Biden was going to be bad for the economy. They thought he was going to be bad for gas. And so the gas prices preemptively went up a little bit. Then Joe Biden is inaugurated in January. And it turns out that those fears, those suspicions were entirely accurate. Yes, because in the first week of his presidency, he lays down an executive order that bans the Keystone Pipeline, that shuts the production down on it. Well, way to prove him right there, Joe. But that's only one element of it. Flash forward again a few months, April of this year. CNN reports that the national tank truck carriers, which is essentially the industry's trade group, says that 20 to 25% of their fleet are parked heading into the summer of this year due to a paucity of qualified drivers. Now, I don't know what a paucity means, but essentially what they're saying is that a lot of their trucks with gas in them are being parked heading into the summer of this year because they don't have enough drivers. Now, what happened? Well, a number of drivers retired, a number of them switched industries, moved out, moved on. They haven't been able to fill those positions, which is a big problem because now they have this fuel, but they don't have the people necessary to get it from point A to point B. And if you don't have fuel, then you're not going out to businesses, you're not going out to restaurants, you're not going shopping, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, which means more businesses are negatively impacted by the lack of fuel. In addition to the consumer, of course. Flash forward again. Russian hackers cut off access to a major gas pipeline, leaving thousands in the south without fuel, without the ability to get to work, assuming that they are working, of course. This is the perfect storm, the perfect culmination of all of these different things feeding into a big problem. Gas shortages and gas increase is in prices that I don't know that we've ever seen. Not in a very long time, at the very least. Now, I know that's got a lot of people wigged out, got a lot of people worried. Take Joe Biden, for instance. I mean, he must have been worried about wasting gas. He actually asked a reporter to step in front of his car so he didn't have to waste the fuel to try chasing him down and running him over.
Mr. President, can I ask you a quick question on Israel before you drive away?
No, you can't. Not unless you get in front of the car as I step on it.
What a funny old codger. What a nice old man. Now, this administration, if you were looking for evidence that it's got its priorities screwed up, look no further than this. According to Fox, I know, great evil Fox. According to Fox, that the Biden administration is going to waive sanctions on the corporation and CEO overseeing the Nord Stream 2. Now, what is the Nord Stream 2? The Nord Stream 2 is a gas pipeline that's going to go from Russia under the Baltic Sea straight into Germany. It essentially is going to allow Russia to double the amount of natural gas that it exports to Europe. Translation, Europe's dependency on Russia for gas is now doubled. Translation from the Biden administration, gas pipeline in U.S., bad. Gas pipeline in Russia, good. More aggressive behavior towards Ukraine from Russia, good. More European dependency on Russia for gas, good. Now, I'm not an historian, granted, but I'm pretty sure that Russia is not currently and never has been our friend, Europe's friend, or even their own friend. I seem to recall reading some article some time ago about 100 million people in Russia that did something. I don't remember what. I don't remember the article being very nice, though. Either way, the Biden administration has been softballing it with the Russians for really since they've taken office. I mean, just period. I mean, look no further than the Russian hackers. Russian hackers cut off access to fuel for thousands of Americans. And what does the Biden administration have to say when they're asked about what they're going to do about this?
So first, we recognize that victims of cyber attacks often face a very difficult situation, and they have to just balance often the cost benefit when they have no choice with regard to paying a ransom. Colonial is a private company and will defer information regarding their decision on paying a ransom to them.
Now, if that sounded like a softball response, that's because it is! God, oh my God. Now, the gas crisis is only one half of this perfect storm. What's the other half, you might ask? Well, it's everybody's favorite. Inflation. The Dow Jones, as reported by CNBC, estimated that in the month of April, we were going to see 1 million new jobs, and that unemployment wasn't going to rise above 5.8%. Well, it most certainly did. It rose to 6.1%. And in terms of the new jobs that we saw in April, we only saw 266,000, which means that they were off by, don't tell me, 734,000 jobs. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Boy, if that doesn't shore up your faith in our institutions and experts at large, I don't know what will. Oh, dear Lord. Now, additionally, the Consumer Price Index rose 0.8% during the month of April, marking the period of April 2020 to April of 2021, the largest increase in prices that we've seen in a 12-month period since September of 2008. Make no mistake, inflation is upon us. So you really, the cool thing about like having a gas crisis at the same time that inflation is kicking off is that it gives you some kind of like new creative ways that you can like heat your house and cook your food.
Hose down now, kids. Chicken's almost ready.
Now, for those of us who don't have such means, I know that things can seem bleak. I know looking at the economy, looking at gas, looking at the racial divisions that are deepening every single day in our society, looking at the conflict in the Middle East, I know it seems like the world may be falling down. I know it may seem dark right now, but don't worry, okay? You do not have to worry. Do you know why? Because I got one of these. I got a letter from the IRS. You might have one as well. I know that they were sending them out. It says, and I quote, "My fellow American, on March 11th, 2021, I signed into law the American Rescue Plan. A law that will help vaccinate America and deliver immediate economic relief to hundreds of millions of Americans, including you. A key part of the American Rescue Plan is direct payments of $1,400 per person for most American households. With the $600 direct payment from December, this brings the total relief payment up to $2,000. This fulfills a promise I made to you and will help get millions of Americans through this crisis. Blabbity, 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 blah. When I took office, I promised the American people that help was on the way. The American Rescue Plan makes good on that promise. This bill was passed to provide emergency relief to millions of Americans. I want to be sure you receive all the benefits that you are entitled to. This has been a long, hard time for our nation, but I believe brighter days are ahead. We are on the path to vaccinating the nation. Our economy is on the mend. That's not true. And our children will be back in school. Also not true. I truly believe there is nothing we can't do as a nation as long as we do it together. Sincerely, Prezi Joseph R. Biden Jr." Well, there it is, folks. You do not have to worry because the American Rescue Plan is in effect and all will be made righteous again in the eye of God. You know, the thing that gets me about that self-aggrandizing bullcrap of a letter, more than anything, more than the false hope, more than the outright lie of the economy, for starters, is the $2,000 check thing. He ran on the campaign trail saying he was going to deliver $2,000 checks. He didn't. He delivered $1,400 checks. And he mentions the $600 payment in December. He wasn't even in office yet. He had nothing to do with that. I mean, honest to God, you could make the argument that Nancy Pelosi is the one who deserves the credit for the $600 check. I mean, after all, this is the woman who for months during the height of the pandemic held up aid to the American people, right? And then all of a sudden, December rolls around and she signs off on the bill releasing this aid to the American people. You might ask yourself, what changed? What gave her the gumption to sign this bill to finally release that aid?
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
Oh, sorry. Wrong clip. Here's the right one.
I don't work with the males because I used to be one.
No, it's true, but wrong clip again. This should be the right one.
What shifted, in your opinion, when the Problem Solvers Caucus had a much larger bill a few months ago? You did not like that piece of legislation.
A new president and a vaccine.
We had a new president. I mean, it's not as if all of us didn't already know that that's what it was straight from the get-go, that this whole thing was an FU to Trump overall. But the fact that she actually had the gall to come right out there and say it just tells you everything. Tells you that she does not have an ounce of fear in her body in terms of whether she does not fear being held accountable on any level whatsoever. Because she's not. She is not going to be held accountable whatsoever. Certainly not by our media. God, I mean, that woman, she looks like a screaming witch. She looks like somebody took a raisin and stretched it out, then scrunched it back together, and then stapled it over her skull. And she's out there every single day perpetuating hate, division, filth, lies, corruption, greed. She thanked George Floyd for dying like he was some sort of ritualistic sacrifice. This is insane. God. Oh, my God. And in that spirit, it's now time to roll into our next segment. Flashback Friday, blessed by God himself. For our Flashback Friday segment, we'll be playing for you the clip of Joe Biden explaining his infrastructure bill.
I promise you, it's not part of my speech, but I promise you, you're all going to be reporting over the next 6 to 8 months how China and the rest of the world is racing ahead of us in the investments they have in the future, attempting to own the future, the technology, quantum computing, investing significant amounts of money in dealing with cancer and Alzheimer's. That's the infrastructure of a nation.
Well, that's interesting to know. It's interesting to know that the reason the roof above me isn't caving in, why the floor beneath me isn't collapsing, why the walls around me are standing, is because of this jar of aspirin that I tend to keep in my medicine cabinet. It's good to know that the reason why the roads, the bridges, and everything that I use to get to work every day are there is because these pills are infrastructure. Are you out of your freaking mind? Alzheimer's medicine is medicine. Bridges, buildings, and walls are infrastructure. I would criticize you further on this if I thought you were even capable of remembering the criticism. After it has left my lips, you demented old fart. God, I need a Tylenol. This concludes our Flashback Friday segment, blessed by God himself. Now, I do have some bad news. We were supposed to have a one-question Q&A tonight with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Unfortunately, Miss Cortez was busy and we had to reschedule. So instead, our one-question Q&A was held with Merrick Garland. Mr. Garland, it's a real pleasure to be talking with you, sir.
We will,
Oh, okay. Now, I know that there's really one question on everybody's mind right now, so I'll just ask it. Do you know how to have sex?
Well, I haven't thought about that question. I just haven't thought about that question.
Well, just what are you saying, sir?
I just don't know the answer to that question. I haven't thought about it.
Seriously?
Powerful stuff. Now, I did want to talk about something that I feel the media's kind of let go of, maybe even forgotten about in recent weeks. The border crisis. Now, Say what you will about Donald Trump, but one thing is certainly undeniable. The man was great at combating illegal immigration, right? Under Donald Trump, illegal border crossings reached a record low of 832 a day for the year of 2017. That's according to CNBC. Now, why is that? Well, it's for a number of reasons, a number of policies. For starters, he limited those who qualified for asylum, right? He put a greater scrutiny on people who traveled through multiple countries to seek asylum only in the U.S., right? Because if it's so dangerous in your country, well, why would you go through 5 or 6 different countries to get to the U.S.? Why wouldn't you stop off at the first country nearest you? All right? Second of all, he implemented a zero-tolerance policy, right? Anybody caught illegally trying to cross the border were referred for criminal prosecution, unlike the catch-and-release method under Barack Obama. And he also got rid of the temporary protected status granted to illegal aliens from El Salvador, Haiti, Nicaragua, and the Sudan. Now, let me be clear. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. Not by any means. There is a cost to that. I know a cost seems to be a running theme in this episode. But let's look at that. Let's look at the fiscal cost, for starters. According to a study, a 2017 study done by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, illegal immigrants cost the American taxpayer $116 billion a year. You might ask yourself, well, how does that happen? Well, say a illegal immigrant breaks the law in New York and then flees to Massachusetts. Well, it costs money to arrest them in Massachusetts, costs money to house them in Massachusetts, costs money to transport them back to New York, costs money to arraign them, costs money to run that court case, costs money to implement whatever punishment the court deems necessary. Additionally, if an illegal immigrant has a child and puts that child in public school, well, that's taxpayer funded right there. If they live in a neighborhood that has street cleaning and sanitation duties or trash pickup, taxpayer funded right there. If there's a fire in their apartment and the fire department's called, taxpayer funded. If somebody breaks into their apartment and the police are called, taxpayer funded. If they have a heart attack and go to the hospital, taxpayer funded, taxpayer funded, taxpayer funded, taxpayer funded. Okay? There were an estimated 12.5 million illegal immigrants in the United States in 2017. They accumulated $134.9 billion in costs related to these services. They only contributed $19 billion in tax revenue, meaning that $116 billion in costs from these services are now at the feet of the American taxpayers every single year. Okay? That's just the fiscal cost of illegal immigration. But let's look at the humanitarian cost to it, right? Biden likes to say a more humanitarian approach to immigration. Well, okay. According to a 2017 study conducted by Doctors Without Borders, 31.4% of migrant women are sexually assaulted and raped en route to the U.S., right? Now, that was a 2017 report. A more recent report by Fusion suggests that 80% of Central American women are sexually assaulted and raped en route to the U.S., all right? You look at the people who are making the biggest profit from illegal immigration, it's human smugglers. It's the cartels. It's these organizations that treat people like cattle, that leave people to die out in the desert if they fall off the track, or will rape the people that they're bringing over to the U.S. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about their humanity, right? You want that to stop, you have to disincentivize illegal immigration. You can't just open up the borders and say, we hope everything works out for the best. That does not work. Under Biden, the number of illegal crossings, number of illegal border crossings has risen to 6,000 a day as of March. 6,000. Went from 832 to 6,000. So let's break that down. What does that look like? Well, here it is under Trump, right? Not too bad, not that full. Here it is under Biden. And here's what it looks like when Biden administration tries to, quote unquote, fix the problem.
Gently extend your arm. Extend your middle finger. Very good.
These people do not care about the border, all right? It's just a political talking point for them, period. And if you don't believe me, all right, has Joe Biden been to the border since becoming president? No. He assigned Kamala Harris to handle the border crisis. But has she been to the border?
Not today.
Did she go to the border facilities? No. Did she interview the ICE members? No. Did she see these people that are stuffed in these cages? No. They do not care. They do not care, and they don't have to care. Do you know why? Because they aren't going to be held accountable for it whatsoever. And they know that. They know that. I, for one, was sick and damn tired of this, honestly. And when I bumped into Jen Psaki the other day outside of Costco, I decided to take the opportunity to try and ask her an actual question about this. Try and hold her administration that she speaks for and represents accountable. Here's what happened.
Miss Psaki, what's the president's position on children in cages?
Spoiler alert, she did not circle back. But in the spirit of democracy, I thought it was important to sit down with somebody on the other side of the aisle and get an alternative take on the border crisis, which is why I interviewed Jaketastic. He is a Democrat and a liberal, and perhaps the most politically incorrect person I've ever met in my life, which is saying a lot. But before we roll into that, we do have some messages for you from people who are not our sponsors.
A comic book panel presented to you by Manic Musings.
It was late. I was walking down the street when out of the dark emerged a majestic black man. He glistened in the streetlight as he passed me, and I found myself saying, "My, that is a beautiful black man." That's when I realized I saw a color.
This has been a comic book panel presented to you by Manic Musings.
All right, the moment of truth. Jaketastic and I, a liberal and a conservative, sitting down together and discussing the border crisis. Go.
So the border thing doesn't...
I mean, it's concerning to a certain degree, but it's like, I mean, even if 10,000 people walked over the border into Texas right now, first off, first off, you know, I made an awesome point about Texas is they love bitching about every thing, and then when they don't get their way, they're like, I'm leaving the country.
Oh my
God. Done. But give me a bunch of money. But we're a commonwealth. We don't need help. You know what I mean? They love bitching about that. But they also have 150 miles of shitty wall that's not being used. They could burn that shit to keep warm. Tell me it's being used for anything useful if people are just fucking still coming across. There's giant holes in the wall.
The border policies they've been laying down have been really... You pretty much like catch and release or whatever into the States.
I mean, that's the way it was before. It was before for a long time.
Trump reformed that pretty
well, I'm talking pre-Trump. It's like... I mean, the problem is like when you have this whole thing where like give us your tired masses and then you're like as long as they're not brown, that's a bit of a problem.
That's not what it is. I mean, there's a legal
No, we want Scandinavians.
There's a legal system to get into the country.
Sure, but it doesn't help you whatsoever if you're like trying to claim political asylum from some place where like they make Nikes. Because if they make Nikes in that country, Josh, you make 25 cents an hour. Do you know how expensive it is to come over here legally? I wouldn't be able to get here legally.
You just hate it when Chinese people like swim across the ocean.
They
get here and we have to send them back.
They can fly, Josh. It's just 1 billion Chinese people flapping their wings for every people, and then the guy just gets the updraft like Legend of Zelda.
I know, and people say Dr. Seuss wasn't racist for putting all those Chinese people in cages in If I Ran the Zoo.
That's what we need to do. Is like that's the kind of like up racism we need. Just start making lies. Did you know white people like have hollow bones? I don't know. That's why they walk so daintily. I don't know. Just the fast twitch muscle fiber thing for black people was the best. No. There's so much. You don't remember that? It was a big thing, like where every.
I'm 7, Jake. I don't. What are words?
What is this?
Sell me this pen.
No, there was this like shitty pseudoscience for the longest time. They're like, oh yeah, black people can run faster because they have fast twitch muscle fibers. I mean, fast twitch muscle fibers are a thing, but they're in kind of everybody.
Well, no, they have 3 legs. You know, is what it comes down
to. And that's when Terrence just went into a full gallop. He never thought to bring his dick into the equation. Just to go faster. In hell, one Viagra and like a real good day of cardio, and I gotta think you could figure that out. All right. Hear me out, because this could be awesome.
This ought to be good.
Beyblades are amazing, right? They're basically tops.
Yeah.
Okay, so some people don't have legs. What if we
just rip people's legs off? Put them on a spinner?
Yeah, no, I'm saying like you put them, you just push, you push them into the thing and then they spin. And...
It's the ballet of the future, man.
Yeah, but it's like Running Man. It's like
Running Man?
Yeah, well, but they don't have any legs. They're just Beyblades. I don't know, man. I think there's opportunities. Robots, science robots. We could do a lot of things with that. But tell me a human Beyblade wouldn't be amazing.
And that was a conservative and a liberal talking about the border crisis. Now, before we wrap up today's show, I did want to read something for you. And don't worry, it's not from my book. You have to actually pay for that. Available on Amazon. No, it's from a book called Being an American, written by William O. Douglas. It says, "The foundation of our society is the minority. It is not merely the minority based on race, creed, or color. It is first and foremost the smallest minority of all, the individual conscience. Hitler would say, 'What a weak rod on which to lean in comparison with the forced unanimity of my people. How can one man dare to hold out against the state?' We know the answer. America has always known the answer. Recognition of the smallest minority is written in blood as well as ink. In our Bill of Rights, that precious document represents a great historic struggle to make men free. It is the cornerstone on which our cultural and spiritual values rest. It is a constant reminder to us that once we strike down the expression of ideas that we despise, we have forged an instrument for the suppression of ideas that we cherish. We know that the constitutional safeguards of equal justice under the law are absolutely essential to the preservation of liberty. For history has shown that once persecution is unloosed on one minority, it spreads like a blight. We know that man is strong only when man is free, that man is free only when he has those inalienable rights proclaimed by our Declaration of Independence." That book was written in 1941, 80 years ago. And yet those words seem to ring more true now than they ever have. And they also feel more dangerous now than they ever have. Because our society has gradually shifted away from the truth. And now there's no denying the cost associated with truth-telling. To steal a quote, if telling the truth were free, every Tom, Dick, and Harry would be a truth-teller, right? If doing what's right was easy, everyone would be a saint. Yes, there is a cost, absolutely. But the truth matters. And the truth is that our founding fathers and the spiritual values that inspired them to write those precious documents, that led them to create this great country of unimaginable opportunity and freedom, that truth, the truth, that is being systematically ripped away from you, from me, and from your kids. And it is incumbent on us to stand up and to say enough. It is incumbent on us to stand up and speak out. And I get why that is scary. I get why that is terrifying. We all have something to lose. Don't get me wrong. Some of us more than others. But the cost of doing nothing is far higher than anything that the far left could possibly throw at you. And that is the truth. If you want to wake up in an America tomorrow that's actually worth giving back to your kids, we have to stand up today. We can't sit back on the sidelines anymore and hope that things will get better. We have to be the hope, because faith without works is dead. And if not you, then who? Who else is going to speak up? Who else is going to do something? It's on all of us. And I am really trying to do my part here. And I am going to keep on trying, right here and out there and anywhere else I can, because that is my promise to you. And I get you might ask, what could I do? What could I possibly do in the face of such overwhelming odds? Well, for starters, you do what me and Jake did here today. You do what people like Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson do on a regular basis. You sit down and you have conversations that matter with people on your side of the aisle and people on the other side of the aisle and people in between the damn aisles. You say F it and you just do it. And beyond that, maybe it means boycotting certain businesses. Maybe it means starting your own business. Maybe it means flooding the offices of your elected officials with phone calls and letters. Maybe it means running for office yourself. Now, I can't give you specifics because each of us has different passions, different talents, different skills, different things that are unique to us, that in and of themselves are unique opportunities to step out and get involved in this fight. And make no mistake, it is a fight. It is a fight of values. It is a fight of freedoms. It is a fight for the individual conscience. We are moving further away from democracy. Whether we move back towards it, that all depends on you, and you matter. So that being said, I'm Joshua Stanko saying, buy my book! And also like, comment, definitely subscribe, definitely hit the notification button if you want to see more from this channel, because YouTube is not going to be putting us at the top of the search results, even if we are. That being said, stay safe, America. Stay informed. We'll catch you next time.